back to the Promoted Podcast. I'm your host, Felicity Fury, engineer, speaker, and author. I'm joined by the fabulous Renee Wooten-Tomlin, engineer, speaker, and founder of New Era Energy. Renee, awesome to have you back on the podcast and jumping on to record today. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's so nice to see you, as always. I'm calling in from Woolgooroo, Kaba and Bindal country today. There's been a lot happening. We've got a fun and exciting weekend ahead in Teeville. There's lots happening this weekend. We've got parties, we've got like a DJ, we've got live music. It's very exciting.
So How are you? Good. I am great. I'm on Gubby Gubby country today. It's school holidays, so I'm in mum mode this week. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with the kids. And we actually went to forest at school this week, which was amazing. We went down by the creek. My son, who's 6, learned how to light a fire, which was super cool with awesome. The flint. I also learned how to do that properly, which was amazing. And then he went and taught his dad when Michael came home from work. So loving spending some more time with the kids and just being really connected to beautiful Gubby Gubby country that we're on up here in the Sunshine Coast. We've got another great topic, Renee, today. I'm so keen to hear your thoughts on this. Of course, everyone is talking about AI, the future of work. I feel like sometimes I'm almost sick of hearing about AI or people complaining about AI or etc. For me, I think it's a really exciting time. Of course, I use it all the time in my day-to-day practice, and it's actually something that's been coming a lot when I've been speaking on panels recently, particularly around the complexities of projects. And I'm really keen to dive in to this topic with you, Renee, just to talk about how you're seeing it unfold from your perspective, how it's affecting your business, your industry. And I think for me, I would kick the conversation off with, I think AI is really another tool, and we've had tools in engineering since, dawn of time, basically. And I even remember being at university learning the space gas model, which is for the structural engineers out there. It's a model where you put in your structure and you test the loads and do all those kinds of things. And I remember at uni, our lecturers saying, you've got to know what the outputs of this model are. What are the orders of magnitude? Do you know that the answers that you're getting are correct? And when I started using this model, I literally had no idea. I didn't know if it was the right decimal placing. And I really had to go back again to first principles, even in my graduate role, doing my calculations by hand to really deeply understand them. And I think it's a relevant conversation today because I'm seeing, of course, AI as a tool, putting garbage in, garbage out like the other tools. And just last week, I was in Adelaide and I was speaking at an event with Engineers Australia, and shout out to Bernadette Foley, who was kicking off the session, and she's actually she leads the professional competencies for engineers. And so I was like, great, let's nerd out about that. They've just done a review. I haven't had the chance to deep dive with her yet, but I'm looking forward to that. And what she shared was actually that when it comes to something like AI, they didn't actually have to change the professional standards a lot because there was already a piece in there around tools and how you use them and making those assessments on and selecting what the right kind of tool is. So I think at the end of the day, it often comes back to that, that way of thinking and that engineering judgment and really honing in on those judgment thinking and questioning skills. Renee, what are your thoughts? It's a big topic. I'm sure we could do 6 episodes about AI and impacting the future of work. What are your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts kind of cast to all of the redundancies that have been made because of the implementation of AI and all of the redundancies still to come because of AI use. So for me, I think that this pops up quite a lot because I think redundancy scares a lot of people and stresses a lot of people. And we're seeing a huge amount of our software engineering friends losing jobs. A lot of our engineering analysts, our junior roles around STEM being replaced by AI. And as somebody who just recently went through a redundancy, it can change your identity. It can change the path that you're on. It can be a real moment of reflection and sadness and grief and all of those things, a change in identity. And so what I was really keen to talk about was probably the diversity of experience that Felicity and I have both had, and the fact that we've kind of become generalists within our own areas, and the benefits that has brought about in our careers as engineers. So for me personally, I started very early on as a very technical person. I started as an engineering intern, and I worked in very engineering specific departments. And throughout my career, I've moved into kind of strategy and management, and I've transcended different verticals from people strategy to technical engineering to commercial, and then, airports to renewable fuels to academic roles to airlines. So I think one of the things that have come out of, the dramatic changes that we've seen across my lifetime. I'm a millennial. I'm in my early 30s. So for me, it's been quite abrupt and quite significant to see the impact that AI has had. But ultimately, ironically, aviation, for example, has always been a very up and down sort of business. Every 5 years, there seems to be quite dramatic redundancies. So change has kind of been something that I've been familiar with for the past now nearly 2 decades in my working career. And I think that is something that, as an engineer, engineering roles have always been very traditional and legacy and stable and warranted and needed. And I don't think that role has necessarily changed. I think what it looks like now into the future is changing. And so I really just wanted to address that it is a crazy time. It is a time of change. But there is a whole world out there for engineers that you can move into because you have such incredible skills. You can move into those kind of verticals that I mentioned that I've experienced myself, and Felicity, hopefully you can share some of that experience yourself. But the future of work, I think, particularly within the renewable fuel space, is changing quite a lot too, or in the fuel space, even the aviation space. The changes that I'm seeing as a result of AI is that the transition to decarbonisation is happening quicker. We're also seeing the evolution of things like quantum computing happen sooner. And it's really giving us so many solutions to problems that we face at an accelerated pace. So in fact, with the evolution of AI, I actually don't see change slowing down or change being this one big moment like the introduction of AI. I see it now as just a constant because we're going to be learning so quickly, because we're going to be adapting so quickly. It's a bandwagon that we all just need to jump on. And so I think for people that are resistant to change, and I have worked in engineering departments for a huge part of my career, I know that we are also most resistant to change. We love our tools and our procedures and our protocols. But I have to say, as an engineer, we have to get on board. We have to adapt. We have to use these new tools because ultimately that's the direction that the future's going. Genie's out of the bottle now, right? AI isn't going anywhere. It's now a part of our everyday use. And I think the workforce that adopts and learns and educates themselves on AI are ultimately the ones that will be the most useful and valuable to industry into the future. We're seeing that, the emergence of these new sectors where we're bringing together different intersections of knowledge and experience, like healthcare with AI, for example, engineering with AI, the energy transition, engineering, energy, and AI. So, and in fact, for me, I think as a generalist now, somebody that isn't particularly deep on any one topic, it's created this emergence of new opportunity where I'm almost the first person in Australia that's now working on First Nations culture, First Nations economic prosperity with aviation fuels and agriculture. And the only reason that I can do that is because I uniquely have this set of life skills and experience. And so my question to each of you as the listeners is, what about you is unique? And if you don't have that diverse set of skills yet, use this opportunity with AI to go and upskill yourself or to think about a different vertical. I know that moving careers can be incredibly overwhelming and stressful and unnerving. Imposter syndrome loves to creep in those moments of change, but I would really encourage you that ultimately that's the direction that I think the future of the workforce is going. Felicity, what do you think?
Oh, there's a lot to unpack in that. I feel like I had lots of tangent thoughts as you're talking. And I think it is interesting, that I get a lot of people say to me, I want to spend more time going deeper on technical. And I feel like it's interesting. And I don't, like putting people in gender buckets, and maybe it's just because I speak to a lot of female engineers. I do find a lot of women say I want to deep dive more technically when they actually have really strong leadership skills. And I think that can be a really tricky jump for people of when do I go from technical to leading? And, am I young? Have I got enough experience to step into that? And they've actually naturally got a lot of those capabilities. So I think it is really important to think about what are those extra pieces that you have that are different from others, because there are lots of, say, technical engineers who are out there. And it was Sally Ann Williams, who used to be at Google, she talked about it for computer science plus X. And so it was, you got your base is computer science and you've got your extra thing. And she was using examples from Google, like, the weather balloon stuff they were doing. There was a lot of tech behind that, but they actually needed fashion designers who knew about materials to actually come up with this weather balloon technology. And so this is like a decade ago, she was talking about this. So I think that's relevant for engineers today. For me personally, I think it's around how do we bring in that human experience and that human care into our designs and really deeply connect with people and think about legacy, think about the long term, think about the regeneration. And for us as engineers, and this is a lot of the research that actually came out of my book, was that I think the inherited DNA that we have as engineers suits our profession well up to this point. And what I'm talking about there is things like, being efficient at all costs, the time, cost, quality, golden triangle, sticking to that. Or I've had bosses say, you've got these three elements, pick two, and this constrained thinking of like, well, we have to fit into these constraints, we have to work to this. It's things like scientific management theory that came from an engineer, Frederick, I forget his last name, and he went to a factory and went, how do we make every single process in the factory manageable and measurable? And then we've got that extraction thinking that came from, say, GE, from Welsh and from his, piece there, or it's around scale and productivity and what Henry Ford talked about. So I think we've inherited this DNA as engineers that is so incredibly valuable. If we didn't have that, if we didn't have the risk mindset that we have, then we wouldn't be where we are today. And obviously, I feel like aviation is a whole other level around safety and risk that as civil engineers, we just don't want our stuff to fall down. Pretty straightforward, where there's a lot more factors and a lot of human factors, of course, and in aviation. So I think, and the lessons are really serious, of course, in aviation too. So I think we have this fantastic foundation that we can build on, but I think it's incomplete for the future and adopting this new technology. So that is something that's really been on my mind in this conversation around how do we actually support ourselves to think for the future, of work in these new ways that we might not have done before. So I think engineering is not wrong, or the way of thinking we've done in the past isn't wrong. It's just incomplete for what we need to go ahead and into the future.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think the thought or the trail that you mentioned about women wanting to go deeper as technical experts, like I think for people that want to remain incredibly technical, your degree and your training, your first jobs, like they're all very technical roles, right? So sometimes I think
which is important. It is important, but I think people often spend too long there before progressing when their skills are in that leadership space.
Yeah, and I think there's nothing necessarily to prove if you're staying there as well as a female because you feel inclined to prove that you can remain technical. Like you've already done the hard yards, but for people that are genuinely just super passionate about the technical, I think that there's still a way that you can transcend different parts of engineering in order to remain a very technical person. And I also don't think that those skills will ever be replaceable because, to your point, AI right now in time is still filled with bugs. It still is not able to generate consistent knowledge and factually correct knowledge consistently over time. So you actually need technical experts in order to believe that the input into AI is giving you the best output. And I think that that's where technical engineers are going to be incredibly valuable, is to actually assess the feedback that we're getting from AI and go, yes, that makes sense. Absolutely, that is irrelevant. And that's one of the biggest challenges that we have with people going through education right now, particularly in engineering, is that they're using AI before they've become technical experts. So actually, I would argue technical experts have become highly, highly valuable in the engineering space. And then just looking ahead to the future, I love what you said around like the standards aren't complete for engineering. They're a great baseline. They've kept us safe in a lot of respects, but there's so much more to it. And that's ultimately what I'm trying to do at New Era Energy, is bring in First Nations principles to care for country, to care for people, to steward country and make sure it is around for generations to come, whilst decarbonising aviation through a credible, chemically, balanced fuel. So there's huge elements of engineering in the work that I'm doing still today, but I'm a generalist in that, I've spanned so many different topics that now I can build something that needs to transcend multiple topics in order to still build a credible engineering business. So, just a different way to think about the ways in which engineering can roll out. But my final point, I would say, in terms of the future of work, is the whole renewable fuels industry is built off a certification standard. And that certification standard is a gold standard that essentially says that unless you have looked at land care management, human supply chains, credible low carbon biomass, land use change, like what are you destroying in order to build crops, for example? And we're actually going to knock you and you're going to get a worse premium for your fuel if you're destroying something in order to build something. This is the future, and we're seeing financial institutes, we're seeing money and markets across the world start to invest in supply chains that are climate resilient and also environmentally aligned. It's ultimately a new balance sheet. It's built on natural capital, it's built on social capital for people, and then commercial capital rises to the top as a result of that. So I think it's such an exciting time to be an engineer, honestly, like to understand that, social and natural capital are now a part of the balance sheet, and markets are swinging that way and starting to value that so that we can be resilient into the future is like phenomenal. Thank God there's hope for the future.
And I think it's actually a really tricky challenge for people starting their career out now. I think it's never been a more challenging time to learn the engineering judgment skills. And I think there's two reasons behind this. One is that we have flexible work, which is fantastic. I am the biggest proponent of that. I am currently in my home office and I love being here.
Shout out.
And the challenge with that though is that if we're not in the office day to day with young graduates, with young engineers, they're not going to hear the phone calls that I would have with a more senior person, hear me actually live solving problems. They're not going to hear someone coming and tapping me on the shoulder and saying, hey, I need your advice on this. How would you work through this? And it's those little tiny interactions, not just the water cooler conversation to build relationships, but it's hearing, hey, or even someone coming up saying, hey, why did you do it this way? And unpacking the thinking behind it. And the other piece is as well, like you said, Renee, people using tools like AI, which is fantastic, but actually not getting that first principles thinking through the solutions in multiple different ways to actually build that judgment. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the onus is put back on to young people, to new professionals, to emerging professionals to have to figure this out. And I think it's going to be a real gap in our industry going forward.
Yeah, great call out. Well, I think that's probably a wrap on this Future of Work episode. It's been fantastic speaking about this with you. I've really enjoyed this episode, actually.
So good.
Yeah, thank you so much to our listeners for joining us today. And yeah, thank you for all your insights. I love that we can bring the experience and then all the academic backing that you bring. It's The merging of two worlds.
Day that I can bring a lot of data back storytelling, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I don't intentionally go, here's the data to back that up, but I think that's just my nature as an engineer, just trying to figure out, what is the effectiveness, the impact of these different things. So I'm very passionate about that. And just before we wrap up, I actually want to do 2 shout outs. So if this is something, if you're sitting here listening going, I want to develop my AI skills, I want to do more of this, there's a fantastic program run by my amazing husband, Michael Fury, and his business partner, Nathan Kritchner, called the Infrastructure Intelligence Lab. And it's actually designed for engineers and professionals to build these skills over a short week period. And what's great about it is it's live, it's practical. People actually go and implement things in their workplace and then come back and do a showcase event. They even have cool prizes. It's amazing. So they've had some fantastic results. So check out the Infrastructure Intelligence Lab if you're wanting to do that. And in a few weeks, I'm actually running my own lab called the Next Gen Innovation Lab, which is all about teaching people thinking skills, how to ask questions, and really unpack some of that engineering judgment. It's going to be a hackathon style event. It's going to be super fun. There's also going to be prizes because, why not? It's happening in Brisbane on the 25th of August. So if that's something that you're interested in, just go to my website, felicityfury.com/lab to check it out and get more info. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Love that. Thank you so much, Felicity, for sharing so much. And we hope that you found today's session helpful, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.
See you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.